like to introduce you to Brandon Hamilton. Brandon, are you there?
I am.
Hey!
Hello.
Thank you for joining. I know this is very different from what you typically do. You're typically the one asking questions. So now I get to ask you some questions.
I'm excited. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Okay. So Brandon, when we first met, you were a reporter in Texas, and I don't remember the name of the news.
KWTX.
KWTX. How long were you there for, and what was your role over there?
So so I was at KWTX 2 years. Time flies, and it seems like just yesterday, but I've actually been going now for almost 14 months. I've been going from 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐞𝐝, but so I pretty much worked out of the Bell County Bureau, which we covered 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐝, Harker Heights, Copper's Cove, all the way back Gatesville, that whole area. And so I reported 3 days a week, and then the other parts I anchored our weekend shows, the Saturday and Sundays on the evening. So, and I filled in sometimes during the weekdays, but mainly covering Bell County, which was fun. Got to meet a lot of people, like you mentioned, including yourself. So it was fun, especially that first year and a half before COVID.
Oh well, yeah. Definitely a different time, I'm sure. I think I've seen you with your mask on and you're interviewing people, and so definitely a different time. But how long have you been in the industry, Brandon?
So I feel old when I say this. So I graduated college back in 2010. So pretty much ever since then, in some form of capacity, I've been doing what I guess you can say what I love. So we're in 2020, so 10 plus years.
And so were you always with WTX?
So I can give you kind of a brief synopsis of my journey. So I actually started out in radio. Radio is what kind of helped me hone in and perfect, as people say, that TV voice. I started out in radio, and then I worked in the NBA for a year for the Orlando Magic because I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Central Florida, which is in Orlando. So I actually worked in Orlando to start my career out as a reporter at WDBO, which was a news talk station there. Worked in the NBA, kind of did some other work in Florida. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to Texas, I think that was 2014 is when I first moved to Texas. I was in Houston. I had moved to Houston literally just to get my master's degree. But then I started working back on radio, did some stuff for the athletics department at Texas Southern, which is where I got my master's degree at. That opened doors for me to work at ABC 13, which was in Houston. I did like digital stuff, like digital reporting. And something kept bugging me. So, because ever since I was a child, I knew I wanted to be on TV. Like, you can talk to my parents, like my grandma, when we were at my grandmother's house, like I would pretend like I was this reporter, this meteorologist. And, but back when I was young, and it's probably the same with you, I think probably everybody. So back when I was young, my grandmother, we used to watch, I get out of school, there was nothing but talk shows on. So from Ricky Lake, Jenny Jones, like the old days of talk shows, and then Oprah. So like, I used to see, and then Jerry Springer kind of sprinkled in there. So I used to see those like talk show hosts, like, I want to do that as a kid. Like I knew I wanted to talk to people. Mm-hmm. And I was also one of those kids where, your parents had to say, stop being in grown folks' business. Like I was always that kid who wanted to know what was going on. So when I got to Houston, I knew I wanted to be back on TV. So I left Houston, headed to 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐞𝐝, and that's when I started at KWTX back in 2018. I think that's 2018. So I was there for 2 years through 2020. So flew by quick.
Wow, you have a very extensive background. That's exciting. Do you feel like, I don't want to say do you feel like you've arrived, but do you feel like there's more to what you're doing, or are you happy where you're at? What are your goals?
So I do. For me, which I think as a viewer, you can probably tell when I say this separates to me, the reporters who do it just because it's the job and, they're on TV, yada, yada, yada. And then, the reporters who do the job, but they do it because they actually care about their community. They care about the people. They want to be that change. And so that's for me. So I don't think I'm truly in a place where I can say, you know what, I've accomplished everything, because I still want to tell those stories and versus. So when you think about local news, we turn stories every day. So a lot of stories we can't really do because we have to literally the same day. So I want to, tell those stories, keep telling those stories that matter to people. And again, I know COVID has kind of threw a wrench in everything because I can't be out in the community like I want to. You can't, we're starting to get back to normal, but it's still kind of weird. So for me, it's still trying to climb that ladder, hopefully get the opportunity to anchor, somewhere 5 days a week and just climb up and still being able to tell, stories that we care about, what the community care about, and to know that, I'm making a difference in someone's, maybe not even 5 people's lives. If I make a difference in one person's life, I feel like I've done my job. So that for me is why I don't feel like I'm, gotten to that place, because there's always so much more that I feel like I can do as far as, making this world a better place. And we need it. We've seen this past year or two with the pandemic, and even before that, we know violence and crime is all around us. So,
yeah,
how are we using our platform to make it better? So,
and that's actually the other thing I wanted to ask, because I know that you've reported on really hard news, like heavy news.
Yep.
So how, and I know everyone's stories, it's important to tell the story. How does that affect you? Because these, this is the news, and sometimes those things sell, unfortunately, but people tend to gravitate towards things that are more heart-wrenching and just, do you know what I mean? How does that affect you?
So that old rule, when I was in college and undergrad, it was like, oh, you should never get close to a story. I don't believe in that. Again, journalists, we're not robots. There are some journalists that are robots, but I don't prescribe to that. For me, the only way you can connect to the community and can connect to viewers, for me, is to be human. When you're interviewing a family, if they're crying and that story connects you, you're there with that family. You're the shoulder, you're their voice, And so for me, I do not have a problem hugging families, crying with families. We're human. So for people in Texas, I know we all remember my last 5, 6 or so months at KWTX was following the Vanessa Guillen case. And that was kind of gut-wrenching and just somber and heartbreaking, covering it from the beginning and then seeing the end. But being that personable, just human, allowed me to connect with that family. Even now here in Charlotte, I still get updates from the family. We still talk. I've still talked with their attorney, because you're human. So to understand the horrors and the pain they went through, and any family, it's just to show that you care. And so that's what I feel like, what separates the good journalists and reporters versus the reporters who are just to report a story. You have to, as a reporter, you have to be in your community. You have to show the people that you want to tell you want these people to tell your business to you. You want them to, oh, Jay, can you tell me about your life? But then you don't connect with them. It doesn't work that way. So you have to show people that you genuinely care about their situation and about the community you live in, no matter how long it is. And that will take you so far. So that's always been me. And I still feel that way, because if you don't, these stories can tear you apart. Covering crime every day, especially when kids are being killed or kids are dying. They're innocent. Kids are innocent. And so you have to be able to connect to the community so that they see you're human as well. There's nothing wrong, to me, showing emotion when you're doing a story, because you're human. It shows people at home you know what, Brandon does care. And I think to me, that's the most important part when covering these stories, because you want to be able to show people not only that you're trusted, but that these stories also affect you too. Because if covering like the Vanessa Guillen story or covering crime didn't affect me, how would that, you would think I was, like a robot or, or a person that didn't care. So
yeah.
I know it's a long spiel.
No, I'm so glad. I love listening to people's stories. That's part of the reason why I decided to do this, is because I feel that so many of us have stories to share and experiences to share that other people can, get value from. And I think, just like you cover so many of us already, Brandon, and you have a story. So I wanted to know your story and why it is that you're passionate about this. And it sounds like you've been passionate about this since you were a kid.
Yep.
And so you are doing your purpose. You're doing like what you absolutely love to do. So I had questions for you. So one of my questions was, how do you manage stress under deadlines? How do you? But you love it, so that's why I'm like.
So I think you just have to, at least for me, handling that stress. And so, each jobs are different, doctors, teachers, lawyers, everybody has their stress, but our stress is every day. We have deadlines, 2, 3, 4 deadlines every day. So to manage that, you just have to be purposeful and create a time schedule kind of in your own head. So that's how I manage the day. I work our night side shift, which night side and news. So for here on the Eastern Coast, we are 2:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. because our newscast is at 11 versus 10 o'clock in Central in Texas. So it's just, after getting our meeting, knowing, okay, you got 5 hours to do this. You can spend 2 hours on this. You need at least 30 minutes to write. You need at least 30 minutes to edit. So it's just mentally putting things in your head to kind of make the stress less. Now the stress is still going to be there, but the goal is to make it less, because anything that you do live, there's just going to be that automatic stress. But I try to plan out mentally in my head, whether it's jotting down notes or which helps me. I like, if I'm driving, coming back from an interview, and I'm thinking of how can I write this story, then it just comes to me. I have to like jot it down on my phone before I forget it. So it's just taking those mental notes and then just timing out the day.
So it sounds like a lot of time management.
Yep.
So a lot of time management, and it sounds like, yeah, because so a little bit about me. I actually reported for ABS-CBN News for the Philippine news station. So that was a while ago, but I was either in front or I was behind cameras. I had a video company, but I know that when you're thinking about something, you're thinking about stories, it's like you're driving, like you said, and you're like, oh, I need to jot it down. Do you use like your voice memo? Do you look like a different technology in order to like gather all your thoughts? Because I'm sure it comes randomly.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I use. Voice memo, the notes in the phone, mainly the notes in the phone, because the notes you can email like to yourself. So when I actually go to write the full story, I can already have it emailed. And then there's also another app. It's called Otter. I don't know if you ever use it. It transcribes voice for you. So when I say voice, like so it's easier for me when after an interview to use the Otter because it transcribes the interview.
That's
instead
awesome.
of me having to literally sit there.
Oh my gosh, that takes away so much time from having to like try to find the sound bites, and it's actually on the Otter. That's cool. Yeah, tips and tricks. So if there is somebody out there that's aspiring to be a journalist, what are 3 things that you can possibly tell them to master their craft?
The first thing is, I would say, purpose, and that's to find your purpose. I kind of alluded to it when I was talking about what I feel like, my duties as a reporter. So find your purpose. You have to figure out if you being a reporter, is just because you want to be on TV, that's fine, but you probably won't last. If your purpose is truly telling stories and being the voice, as I like to call it, the voice of the unheard and the gatekeeper of your community, that is your purpose. So once you find that purpose, it will make, I'm sure, as you know, being a reporter, you know, when you start out, you're making nothing. So if you know your purpose, though, that making barely minimum wage and then climbing up the ladder, yeah, it may get to a point where you're like, is this worth it? But that purpose will remind you it is worth it. So that's what I recommend. First, finding your purpose and then understanding your purpose. The second part is just honing and keying in on those skills, especially your voice. It took me a while. Thankfully, you know, I had mentors when I was in Orlando. And I need Madeline Woods. She had worked for BET and came back to Orlando, and she literally would mold my voice. And that's the second thing, just practice. So even if, you know, when I was younger, we didn't have these cell phones now. We didn't have the HD 4K cameras on phones. So you know, young folks have it made now. So if you want to be it, go to Best Buy, Walmart, get that tripod for your phone and practice, practice, practice. Look in the mirror, enunciate, talk, practice. You don't have to have a $2,000 camera. Your phone does just as much as these cameras these days. So, so finding your purpose and practice, repetition. And then the third thing I would recommend for anyone trying to be a reporter is to just knowledge of the industry, knowledge of kind of your path. And with that knowledge, being outgoing, personable, and empathy. So all that kind of it evolves in it. You have to have empathy when you're interviewing people. You have to understand these places that people are going. And then in that aspect, and then also like on Lemonade Day, you have to have that empathy and outgoing because you do become the community person. You do become the face. So you can't just walk by people. Like you have to understand your purpose because that will allow you to know your place in the community is to be that voice and to just be the person that a community looks up to, kids, you know, strangers, complete strangers. So all that encompassing and kind of the asterisk on the end, it's not easy. So I will tell anybody that I also adjunct now at TSU. So I tell my students that all the time. It's not easy. You have to, and that's why I put purpose number one. Like you have to know your purpose because it's not easy being a reporter. You have those deadlines. You have hours. There were days at KWTX I worked way past 40 hours a week, but didn't get paid for those 40 plus hours. We were, you know, sometimes if there was a shooting, 3 o'clock in the morning would go out. So it's never ending, but it's so rewarding. If your purpose is truly in the right place, it's so rewarding to see the work and the fruition. And to be talking to you and then to get those messages from people, you know, thanking for your story or the viewers, just thanking for the things that you've done. So,
well, I think the huge case, you know, Vanessa's case, that touched nationwide. Yep. It wasn't just in 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐞𝐝, which was crazy, you know, because it was there, and I don't think any of us knew the gravity of how it would impact people, you know. And you are definitely the voice. I mean, when you came over, you know, there were other reporters that came over, they were the voice of us, you know. What were we doing there at Lemonade Day? So reporters really do have such a vital place in our society. However, and I'm gonna, you know, put this in there, they're also seen as, well, how do we know they're telling the truth? You know, how do we know it's factual? You know, there's been several years now that people are like, you know, we don't know if those are true or not. So how do you ensure your work is accurate and factual? How do you do that?
So first, I tell people I don't get paid enough to lie. But no, in all seriousness, well, it's serious, but in all seriousness, I mean, when we think of local news, and I mean, even national news, I think a lot of people get news confused with, you look at the CNNs, the Fox News, the MSNBCs, the network news, people confuse when there are pundits in the commentary with actual news. So in commentary, if I'm making an opinionated about something, that opinion doesn't necessarily have to be fact. But that's what a lot of your cable news is when you look at, the Fox News, CNNs, a lot of the shows are commentary based. So people compare that with local news. And in local news, I mean, we all pride ourselves on being truthful, factual. And I think in these recent years, we've gotten to a place where we have put reporters and journalists on this kind of pedestal that's not real. I mean, we're all human. So it's like, say I do make a mistake. Now it's automatically, oh, you're fake news or you're not telling the truth. No, I made a mistake. We're human. Just like you make a mistake at your job, I make a mistake at mine. So I think we've kind of gotten to a point where that's not possible anymore. So for us as reporters, especially, I mean, speaking definitely for me, every day, we have people look at our scripts. We get them checked twice. I look over my scripts multiple times. Even the people we're interviewing, we're vetting them while we're interviewing. So, I mean, there's a lot of steps to take because truthfully and honestly, none of us wake up in the morning to say, you know what, I'm going to lie about my story today. That's just not, it's just not how it works. So, I mean, I can truthfully tell everybody that, we every day strive that our stories are factual, correct. And if it's not, because it does happen, if someone may tell us something that's not true, or we may have missed something, we do correct it when we need to correct it. So, and that's just, we're humans. So, but I do strive every day to make sure that, our stories are correct, because I'm also a perfectionist. So that's another tangent.
I think a lot of people who are driven and who are, go-getters and just people who want to succeed are perfectionists. So I totally understand. I can understand. I've heard many people say that actually. So, so what is your next step? Are you going to continue on in North Carolina? What are your plans?
So as we know, this TV industry is forever changing, especially now with COVID. It's definitely changed kind of how we work, because you may not have known, because I mean, y'all probably don't know because you're not in the building. So here, our workflow has really changed to where a lot of times we're working out of the car. Like we don't go in the building anymore as much because of COVID and all the protocols. So they're trying to minimize as many people in the building. So the industry has changed. So for me, as I anchored at KWTX in Waco, I've been filling in now. So that's kind of my path of where I want to go, is to keep climbing up that anchor chair, because it's important. And as minorities, it's important for people to see people who look like them when they look up at a television, and to be able to relate and have those stories told. So I want to keep continuing and climbing up that ladder. And again, telling those stories. Now, is that in local news? I have no idea. I didn't think I was going to be in Charlotte. So, and I mean, I love Charlotte. So Charlotte may be, a forever place, but I'm a person of a believer to where, wherever the man above sends me, I honestly have no idea. I mean, I know where I want my career to go. Okay. That's anchoring and being able to tell, those stories still, but I have no idea where that may be.
I think many of us were kind of surprised when you were moving over to North Carolina. We're like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, so I mean, so the scoop in that is, so in TV, we're on contract. So most of the contracts like 2-3 years, and as you move up, moving up means opportunities and more money in your pocket. So that's why you will see a lot of people, especially in like 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐲𝐿, Waco, in Bell County. A lot of people will come in and out. It's just climbing up that ladder, because I mean, you were a reporter before, so the minimum amount of money that reporters make. So, so it's about those opportunities and getting more money, because you got to pay the bills.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm so happy that you're where you're at and you're honing your craft too. So I think no matter where you go, you're just going to continue growing, and I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier was minorities. People do need to see more of us. I think I live here in Hawaii, and so here in Hawaii, the reporters are just like me, like they're minorities here. So we don't see like a discrepancy, here in Hawaii, but definitely in the mainland, it's definitely kind of it needs to be more, more prevalent. I feel we're getting much better though than
it is.
Kids. It's getting better. We took a little step back like several years ago, but I feel like we're getting better. How about you? Where are you in terms of okay, so when you find your stories, how do you find your stories? How does it come to you? Does the manager send it to you, or like, how do you get it?
So it's a mix, and thankfully social media exists, because people put their business on Facebook. So it makes it a lot easier as a as a reporter. But yeah, so it's going through Facebook, Twitter, social media, mainly Facebook, because Twitter's still not there yet with people putting their business on Front Street on Twitter. Nobody does that. But Facebook, you will definitely find people talking about everything that's happened. So getting in those Facebook groups, there's a group for every community, for every lifestyle, everything you can think of. So joining those, here in Charlotte, there's all these different areas. You have your South End, NODA, Dillwork. So all the communities have Facebook groups. You join those, and people talk. People talk about issues they're having, or people talk about crime that they have, or you'll see people talking about, or if there's a shooting, people will even say, "Oh, I know the person that was killed. It's his name." So we wouldn't have known that, because police don't usually release the name until like a day later. But Facebook and people will tell you that the same hour it happened. So just social media, and then a lot of people still send press releases. So if there's an event or something, that press conference that they want you to know about, get an email. And then there are some days where our assignment desk managers will be like, "Hey, this is happening this time. You'll be covering that." But mainly it is being in social media. And truth moment here. When I first moved to Charlotte, I struggled finding stories. Like I struggled coming up with ideas, and it was hard the first couple months I moved out here. I had to have conversation with my managers, because I was a new kid on the block. So I left Bell County, knowing everybody in Bell County, being the trusted person that people would call. I knew who to call. And so it was a reset for me coming out here to Charlotte, and that was hard. But it passed, and I feel like I'm in a good place now. But so that's kind of the social media part, and then just knowing people in the community who can connect you.
It sounds like, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
It sounds like it was a transition. So once you moved, I mean, you didn't know anybody there. You probably need a GPS to find out where the streets were.
Still do.
Oh, and you've been there for a couple of years now. So social media, that is so funny. So is that how you started finding your stories? Because you had that hard time finding it? Then did you kind of transition into like Facebook and just kind of see what's going on?
Yeah, so it was that transitioning into Facebook, into the groups, and then just people, recognizing my name in the groups, and then meeting community activists. That was like the big stepping stone into like kind of linking out with people, was meeting the activists. And it took time again, because I moved out here in COVID. So
Yeah.
that's what made it a little bit longer. I'm sure in a normal year, I would have been able to get to the city and, oh, you want to meet for coffee? Sure. But, I moved into literally the middle of the pandemic, so you couldn't go have coffee with anybody.
No.
So I had to find other ways.
Ah.
It worked out though.
Wow. So I'm sure you did Zooms. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I figured. So you'd have coffee during Zoom calls, and that's how you have your coffee is on Zoom.
Yep.
Thankfully for technology, even for for Facebook. Okay, so now with Facebook, how do you know which stories to choose? Because there's so many.
So you want to kind of think about the story that is going to affect people the most. So like what is going to be the story that people are going to care about, and then you go from there. So if there's someone on Facebook talking about, which we did have, like there was a shooting that really didn't get reported, but this person, called us and then said he had like surveillance video. So it's like, when you see or know those stories, that will also give you a good visual component, because, in TV, you want to see these things. It's just going from there. So it's kind of weeding through the what people are posting to find, hey, what's going to be, what impacts people the most, and then if there's any kind of substance to back it up, whether that's video, photos, or something.
So one of the things that I know my husband and I have discussed is that typically the news can be really negative, right? And there's only like maybe a handful, if that, of something positive. Would you agree to that? And if so, is there a way to change that?
So I think it's hard, because news by nature is a negative thing, in a sense of people don't really pay attention to good news. Like people care about who got shot. People care about that robbery that happened at the store. People care about, in this time, as much as we hate hearing about COVID all the time, that's our number one stories every day. It's COVID. So people care about those. Now, I will say, so for us, we have 1,000 shows. Like we literally are on air from our mornings, 4:30 a.m. to like 7, and back from like 9 to 11. And then we're back in the afternoons from 4 to 7:30 with a 30-minute break for CBS Evening News in there. So we have a lot of shows. So there are, like our 3 o'clock show is dedicated to nothing but good news and community events. And so, I mean, there are instances, but it's going to be probably a time that you're not watching. And so in a normal newscast, you may not see but 1 or 2 good stories. And that's just by nature of what the news is of the day. Like for instance, our 11 o'clock show yesterday, I was on a story of a 6-year-old died from COVID. We had a woman got carjacked and police arrested. Like this man carjacked her in her own car, and she wanted to talk about it. And then we had the Rolling Stones here in Charlotte. So that was our 3 reporter stories. So the Rolling Stones was, kind of a, good mix, but you're not leading a show with the Rolling Stones in town. You're leading, I led the newscast last night because, that's the impact story that affects every parent, child. So it's like, you want the positive stories, but it all measures on how many other stories that you have to tell, which unfortunately, a lot of times that those negative sad stories outweigh the good stories. But we do try for the good news stories. It's just so hard to, make a majority of your newscast that way.
I mean, and I think human nature, I think we're drawn into the drama.
Yep.
Right? We're like, when we're driving on the road and there's police cars, I'm pretty
Slow
sure
down.
I was like, what's going on? Even though we don't want to, or we say, oh, I don't want to do it, we're like, peek. So yeah, I guess, unfortunately, I think we are drawn to, which means that there's more viewers, right? So with more viewers, I'm guessing that also increases the funding for the company, for the news agency. Got you. Okay, that makes sense. I was just putting 2 and 2 together. So, okay. Brandon, it was nice to talk with you. I'm so glad that we had this time together. What do you miss about Texas, or do you miss Texas? And do you have anything to say to people who looked up to you back there?
Yes, so I will definitely say, and I think I put it in one of the Facebook comments. I mean, Texas, especially Bell County, I mean, everybody there, it was family. Literally, I had strangers become family. People I had never met before KWTX became family. People taking me into their home, knew that I didn't have any family in 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐞𝐝, so holidays came or anything, called. So I missed, those people that became family. And, that's why I can definitely say, and I mean, you lived in Central Texas as well. It was definitely a small community, but a small community that had a big heart, and everybody kind of looked out for each other, especially 𝐒𝐞𝐞𝐝, where you had Fort Hood right next to it. So it was definitely that military town feel, but people definitely became family. And so that's one thing I do miss about that Texas lifestyle. Just the people.
Yeah, the home feel. They definitely have, it's a big heart, and everyone's very hospitable. And I agree. I think coming from Hawaii to Texas, I was a little bit afraid, because I'm like, I don't know anybody in Texas. So, walking into new territory. And so I'm sure that's how you feel, or that's how you felt when you went to North Carolina.
Yep.
You're walking into new territory and starting your roots again. And I'm sure people in North Carolina will also welcome you as family. A little bit different now because of COVID,
Yep.
but I'm sure things are getting, a lot better. Hopefully.
It is.
But is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of, okay, let's talk about the technical part of it. Do you want to share anything technical to our viewers here?
Yeah, I mean, as far as technical stuff, I mean, I don't think a lot of people even realize, as far as reporters, what goes into it. So, it's a term called MMJ, which if you, back in Central Texas, that's what pretty much everyone was MMJ. That meant you shot your own stuff, you edited your own stuff. And so you were literally a one-man man, so to speak. So I would definitely, again, talking to, if someone comes back and watches and future journalists, or if you want to be in PR, what have you, I would definitely recommend keying in on those writing skills. You can never not have enough practice when it comes to writing, because it will take you so far to know how to write concise. And that's something I still work on even now, because I like to talk. So when you like to talk, you can get long-winded. So when you're writing, it could be things, when you look down, it's like, wait, I repeated myself with a different way. Let me cross that sentence out. So, you look and you know what? I could have said this instead of 5 words, said it in 2 words. So practicing that writing will help you get so much better. And just the repetition, as I mentioned earlier, you'll see how you start to set yourself apart. And when you start that practicing, it would definitely make it a lot easier. And then, when you get to the technical side, that will be so you don't want the writing and other things to kind of be your holdup, because technical, that will always be a learning curve, no matter what.
There's always something new.
Yeah, computers, software, you will always have to learn something new. Cameras will change. Cameras used to be like this big, now they're this big that week. So it's like there will always be something new that you have to learn. But if you know how to write and are able to get that in early, one less thing you have to worry about. And so
now how do you feel about mentors? Because you did mention mentors before. Is that something that you continue to have, or is that something that? So
yes, I have a couple people in the industry that I can call to not only look at my work, but advice if I need tips. And I think that's important. So I mean, I've offered, like even now, like I call them my students, but I've offered for people to be their mentor. I think it's very important for people to have mentors. And if you have a mentor, to take advantage of that mentor, take advantage of that expertise, that this person is willing to give you. So in this industry of journalism, because, in jobs, we don't want it. We don't want to say like it's, oh yeah, you practice, you go get this degree, do your work, you'll be fine. Yeah, that's part of it. It's still about, especially in this industry, who you know. So if you have mentors in places that can connect you, that who you know will help you get through that door on top of your experience. So, which is, theoretically that has opened the doors for a lot of places for me because of being in the right place and knowing the right people. And it's allowed me to be in places. So I 100% agree and encourage to get a mentor, because again, a good mentor will help you avoid the mistakes they've made. And that's what I want for younger journalists coming after me, is to not make the mistakes I did, be better than me. And so that's what a mentor should want as well, for those who are coming after them, to be better than them and avoid those mistakes.
Wow. Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with the mentor as well. I think, I was just telling my mom and my dad, I said, we always have to better ourselves, right? We never just like stay right here where we are. It's always, even when we're older, we have to just continue to be better, better versions of ourselves. And in order to do that, we definitely need somebody to kind of guide us, right? Because you mentioned writing and practicing writing. I'm sure you don't just look at your writing. I'm sure you have other people critique it and write it, right? So, and I'm sure there's this whole process of being a journal in your field, in your, where you're at. There's like this whole list of things that needs to be done in order for you to actually be on camera. It's not just like a one and done, I just write it and then there you go. I'm sure there's so many different things. One last question before we go, because you've done several stories, Brandon. Have you, and how do you handle an irate or like a aggressive interviewee, or have you had one?
So I haven't necessarily, not that I can think of. I don't think I've had an aggressive person that I've been interviewing. Now, I have been around people who have yelled at me, become aggressive, multiple occasions. Back in Texas, I remember, when Ted Cruz had came to 𝐒𝐞𝐿, went and covered that. He was also one of those who spewed the media was fake news. So all of his supporters there, I'm outside, they come up yelling at me, oh, fake news. And so it's just like you have to, in instances, remember you're working. And also remember, those same people wouldn't come to you on the streets if you just had regular clothes on. So if I was Brandon, like a normal Brandon, that same man would have not come up to me. So you have to remember, people get brave when they feel empowered. And so you just have to shrug stuff off. Now the whole mask debate is going on in schools. So, I was just at a school meeting last week and the previous weeks, and people on the side of, whatever side they may be on, but also, saying the same on the media, you're not telling the truth. You all should be telling the truth, pointing fingers at our faces.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, Okay. So like, I mean, that's all you have to say is okay, because you have to have that composure and understand that because you are in the public eye, because you are the reporter on TV, you represent not only yourself, but the station. So you have to carry yourself professionally. So that may take people yelling at you, pointing fingers at you. You just have to, as hard as it may be, keep it moving, as I like to say, just keep it moving. And it sucks because, you want to be human and respond back to them because you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. But it
that just sounds so challenging to do because you're still human and you're being yelled at, and you're basically the scapegoat. And so, and I think that's part of the reason why I asked, how do you handle it? Because, and how people kind of view reporters, right? There's a certain stigma, unfortunately. And so it's like a good stigma, there's bad stigma. And so to like basically cover your, I guess it's a good thing we have a mask because then you don't you can say something under your mask and still remain positive, right? Still remain professional.
So a lot of times I just hurt people with a smile.
Oh, very good. You know what? You've got a tough skin. You have a tough skin because many people would not be able to handle that because that's a lot, to have kind of I don't know if a group of people, were kind of yelling at you or.
Because like you said, I mean, I understand. I think every reporter, we understand that, especially, these past couple of years, I would say the past 3-4 years up until that, we understand that some people view us as. So we understand that. So the best thing you can do is just smile because we know these same people wouldn't yell at us, would not come up to us on a regular road if we were just John Doe walking down the street. They wouldn't do it. They only do it because they feel empowered, brave, because we're the reporter in the room. So you just gotta smile.
They need to just like share what they're feeling, and that's good. So you basically don't take it personal.
No.
Yeah, very good.
Because again, a lot of it, and some of those may lead to maybe possible stories. Because again, and I'm on the side of no matter what your view is, that's what makes this country so great. Like we all can have so many different thoughts, opinions, and views on one thing, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And I think that's what gets lost in all of this. We like to think our opinion trumps someone else's opinion. And it's just that an opinion is an opinion. So I have your opinion. Mm-hmm. Just, don't and that's the only thing actually just don't disrespect me. Because at the end of the day, again, we're all adults. So adults should treat adults like adults. And that's what a lot of times, though, that does not happen. A lot of adults you see start to act like children. And that may be even putting children in the wrong box. There's a lot of children act,
more like adults.
More mature.
Yeah. Absolutely. I highly agree. So we can go on and on. I would love to talk to you more. I may have you, come on again for another time if that's okay with you.
Oh, as clearly, I love to talk.
Awesome. Okay, good. I'm glad you love to talk. I love to talk to you. So, but with that said, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. I think are you working right now? It's Friday.
No, I am off. So actually, technically I'm off, but because of this high school football season, I do go in for 2 hours on Friday nights to help co-anchor our football Friday night show. Yeah,
because I remember you saying it was like 2:30 to 11:30. And that's pretty much your time, right? 2:30 to 11:30?
Yep.
Well, kind of.
Normal days, yeah.
Unless you get paged, right? We don't use pagers anymore, but you know what I mean. You're like, it's time to go. You're like on call. A reporter on call. But thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate you.
No problem. I had fun.
Thank you. And I don't know if anyone's here who has asked questions, but I'll have them posted below. And Brandon, I will see you again later. Thank you everyone for watching. Aloha. Happy Aloha Friday. Bye.
See ya.